Welcome in, Loons fans, to another edition of the Matchday Preview. Jonathan Harrison here, joined once again by Manny Lagos. Manny, how are we doing on this Thursday morning? So much to discuss. We'll jump into it all with special guest Kyndra de St. Aubin, but how are you guys doing this morning?
Good. It's always weird when you have such a long break in between games, and now, like, out of the blue, like, oh my gosh, we played in 2 days. But it was kind of obviously a good break for the group, and we've got some guys that have international duty that's exciting to talk about, and I'm even more excited to kind of have our host and guest today, who we know very well, and I've spent a lot of years talking a lot of soccer with over the years with Minnesota United. So excited to have you, Kyndra.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I always enjoy getting the nod to come in and fill some airspace with you guys. So, and I was just talking to a friend yesterday about, the way Apple is now in MLS, and you don't get maybe quite as much the inside information. You get to cover all the teams, but trying to get really down in like the deep depths. But I still always feel like such a tie to Minnesota that if I come home on a Saturday night or come back to my hotel, the first game I always turn on is Minnesota United's to see what they were doing if I wasn't covering the team. It's like you can't quite step away from it. It's like and I got my Minnesota hat on today, so
nice. You're always a part of our journey, Kyndra. That'll never go away.
Yeah, exactly. I know Cal's jealous. He never gets to do any Minnesota United games.
I keep harassing him, asking him when he's going to come back and when he's going to come back to Allianz Field. He goes, we're pushing Apple to send us, but they never send him. Looking forward to a lot of this conversation, and I don't think there's any better place to start, more pressing place to start than the U.S. men's national team. A couple of losses since we last talked, Manny, and I know these conversations tend to have a lot of emotion because of the feeling of fandom and wanting this team to succeed. And well, not a whole lot of positives coming from that second game anyways. I guess there was some positives from the first game, 2-1 loss to Turkey, and then a 4-0 loss to Switzerland on Tuesday. And that was just, there's so much coming from that game, but also Christian Pulisic talking on CBS Sports this morning. I didn't get to see that. I was doing stuff for one of my other jobs. But you guys, I know you guys did tune into that. So I don't know where you want to start with this, Manny. There's so much to talk about. Let's just get your feelings on the two games that we saw over the past week or so. We'll get to the Gold Cup stuff later.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a U.S. men's national team fan right now, you should feel pretty down. I mean, I do. It is in a moment now where we're trying to assess our player pool and trying to assess, where we're going to try to build a team in 12 months for World Cup. So I do know that in 12 months is not right now. So my like barely glass half full right now is we are at a lowest place we've been in a long time. Maybe that tough night in Trinidad back in 2018 kind of area. But the reality is we are making the World Cup. We are hosting, and we do have 12 months to kind of talk and grow into hopefully a team that wants to be competitive and represent the U.S. In the World Cup. But just in terms of the two games really quick, I actually didn't mind the Turkey game. I thought that was a pretty darn good game overall in terms of competitiveness, and a great early goal by Jack McGlynn, who's, I think, kind of becoming one of the rising young stars in global soccer. So that was exciting to see. And then two kind of soft goals, but Turkey's a really good team. And I thought we deserved a tie or win in that game based on how we responded going down 2-1. We created a lot of chances. We played, I think, fairly well the rest of the game. But I think Tuesday night hit hard. It hit really hard. And I think there was a lot of areas we can go. I'm sure we'll discuss them. But for right now, yeah, I'll start with the crabbiness has not left completely from Tuesday.
Kyndra, where are you at after the two games that we saw for the U.S. over the past week or so?
I think it's what's hard for me is that the disappointment kind of started before the games even happened, with the release of the roster and the conversations and hearing why some guys were not coming and needing rest and all these things, and just feeling like the importance of not just the World Cup in a year in this country, but just soccer in this country, where we're continuing to try to elevate this game on a national stage to be more relevant internationally, right? And so you're this golden generation. And I literally had this flashback the other day of sitting in the brew hall with Manny and Tony and watching the World Cup in a watch party in when it was in around Thanksgiving when we had the one in November. and just feeling the excitement for that group of young players and the youngest roster, I believe, in the history of the United States, and maybe in all of the World Cup. I don't remember. I just know it was really young. And just feeling like, oh man, can you imagine in 4 years what this is going to be like with this group of guys, and they're playing for these big clubs, European, or internationally. And what are we going to look like when we host in 2026? And so I think the disappointment, unfortunately for me, started before the games even happened. But then you're like, okay, this is an opportunity for these guys to step up. There are a lot of really good quality MLS players in this roster that are playing in these friendlies. And let's see what they can do. We've seen it happen before, and what can they prove on this stage. I agree with Manny. I don't think the Turkey game was like a total disappointment. And these are good teams that you're playing in these friendlies, which is
really
also,
good team.
Yeah.
Also
really
why it
good
was
team.
disappointing that those guys weren't a part of this roster, and heading into Gold Cup to really show what this team could be and play against some good European competition, which is going to be hard to come by in all the upcoming windows. So I wasn't as disappointed. I didn't know what the heck was happening in the second game, because all I got was text from my husband. Did you watch the U.S. game? Are you watching the U.S. game? Did you record the U.S. game? And I was at my daughter's soccer, so I had recorded it. And so I knew it had to have been really good or really bad. And he was like, then I saw 4-0 at half. And obviously I watched it when I got home. Just a thrashing. I mean, because it wasn't just the goals, and I know they didn't get scored on in the second half, but we also didn't score a goal in the second half. But also just the way it just kind of felt like they got played off the field.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I think that's more representative of where we are as a whole right now. Not like, oh, look, you put all these MLS guys on, but by no means any stretch of the imagination is that the case in my mind, because they've lost 4 straight. Pochettino hasn't done a whole lot. So I will say this. I was listening to Alexi Lawless's kind of like post-mortem on that game. And the one thing that he was reminding everybody is, I am still so pumped to have the World Cup in this country. Whether you're excited about the US right now or not as a team, I mean, watching those other games, Spain, Portugal, I mean, some of these other competitions, how pumped are you to have those level of competition in this country 1 year from now, to be able to attend a game, to have the excitement of the World Cup here? So like trying to be, glass quarter full, focusing on, some of the positives of just this country hosting the World Cup in a year's time, but disappointing with how the US is turning up or not turning up right now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the World Cup here in a year's time, but it feels, after watching those 2 games and reading and listening to all the drama that's played out before those 2 matches, and then after as well. I know you guys got a chance to listen to what Pulisic had to say, and I'll ask you about that in a second. But with all the off-field drama as well, not just today, but it feels like since that last World Cup, it's been off-field drama after off-field drama. And it's like, can we just focus on this team and just enjoy what this team is producing? And we haven't been able to do that, unfortunately, due to injuries, due to players sitting out for camps at certain points. So it's been a struggle to get excited for this team, for me personally, as we build up to the World Cup. And this whole window, which has been dubbed one of the most important windows in soccer in this country's history, it just hasn't felt real good to me, I don't know, for the past 4 years. So it's been a struggle, but I'm hoping that, there's still 12 months until the World Cup kicks off. I'm hoping that Pochettino and U.S. Soccer can build something up. What did you guys take away from what you heard from Pulisic this morning, who I know has been the focal point for a lot of the off-field conversation over the past couple weeks because of his decision to not join the team for this World Cup after a long club season and wanting a little bit of a break? Manny, what did you hear this morning?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make sure we don't get caught right now, just all of us 3 pontificating like the gamut of stuff, and let's really parcel out the narrative. So when Kyndra kind of talked there, I think there's a narrative we should talk about, which would be the narrative about the pre-World Cup and the roster for this window / Gold Cup. Okay, I think there's a narrative to talk about in terms of the MLS versus European guys and quality, and discuss that. So I think we should talk about that one, separate it out. And then I think we should talk about Pochettino and his role now, and the expectations we have for him in 12 months to lead this group and really where we are. So I'll start with that first narrative, which we're talking about the roster, and we're talking about how we're preparing 12 months out. Listen, I don't think it's black and white where it should be just all the best guys need to come in no matter what. I don't think it's also fair to not discuss. FIFA has really put a lot of pressure on all the global players right now with all the events they're creating and doing, and just almost overplaying the guys to figure out that kind of club versus country. And the reality is, they've got a lot of tough decisions. I mean, their paychecks come from these clubs. Like, they don't come from that. Now, that's where we can though actually talk about the frustration as a fan. Like, we understand that, we get it, but players in Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Spain, Portugal, they're still navigating both those challenges, and they're still showing a love of putting on their jersey for their country, even if it is not always easy. So I think right away I would say, yeah, I get it. I mean, there's these guys in their prime, and their prime livelihood financially is to kind of, be club centric. But it's disheartening as a national team fan and a former national team player, because we're a year out, and they don't get this time back again to be in and around the national team a year before World Cup. So there's a part of me that's bummed about how it's kind of played out. And I think you mentioned Pulisic, and I just think it's hard. I mean, he's trying to figure out that balance of what's the right way to be sharp for next fall and, frankly, next summer for the World Cup, while we as national team fans are nervous about the leadership of the current group of Europeans in terms of that balance. Mm-hmm. And we're nervous because right now, I don't think the identity of the quality, even though it's better than it's ever been in the U.S. and they're playing at bigger clubs ever, can really jump to now say that we are, from a quality standpoint, going to compete against Portugal and Spain that we saw last week in that level on the field. And so we're very aware that our extra kind of competitiveness is going to have to come from that leadership, that unity, and frankly, Pochettino figuring out tactically how to win a game with less quality at the various highest level. I will tell you, I still think glass half full. When we put our A-team national team, we're in the top 15 in the world. I really believe that. And I think we can beat anywhere from 8 to 15 on any given day. The problem I have is from 1 to 7, we need everything firing. We need the coach tactically be there. We need players committed to not be superstars, but to be role players for the national team. And then we need that mentality of I think what we've had in the past, which is, how do we win a game when we don't have the quality? And there's some DNA of a couple of decades of building up that from former national team programs that knew they just had to fight and grind, but not stupid fight. Mm-hmm. Smart fight, hard work, but smart work. So ultimately, my first one is, I'm disappointed about the group that's decided to not be there, and Christian's part of that, and that's his choice. At the end of the day, he had to make a choice to try to do that balance. I particularly don't love it right now. I don't think it's telling a good story for 12 months out of the World Cup, but let's see where it goes in 12 months.
Yeah, also, to that point, back to the Pulisic interview, I mean, first of all, he didn't have to come out and say anything. And the fact that he was able to kind of sit silently and he's not blowing up, social media, all these things, going after the people that are going after him, people like Landon Donovan, who, that's a whole nother topic for another podcast about him taking his own sabbatical and this and that and the other. But the fact that he came out and said he wanted to play in these 2 friendlies, he wanted to come back and be a part of these 2 friendlies, but not be on the Gold Cup roster so he could take care of some of these niggling injuries, have a little bit of a break, whether it's mental, physical, emotional, all of the above, the grind. Then the comparison starts coming in, right, with Ronaldo and these other guys that are 40 and playing for their countries and but it's not always apples to apples because we don't always know what everybody is going through. So I think maybe U.S. Soccer kind of screwed that one up a little bit in the sense that if they maybe would have just come out and said that would have relieved a lot of what everybody has been saying over the past since the roster got released, even for these friendlies. Or what do you guys think? Should he have let him come in and play in these 2 friendlies and then not be a part of the Gold Cup roster and the rest of that camp? I mean, what would that have hurt to have a leader like that around for the 2 friendlies, but not have him part of? Don't you want Pulisic? Because then people were all over him well, he should just be around camp. He should be around the guys. He should be, even if he's not training, even if he's not playing, even if he's not. What would that have hurt to let him do that? I'm trying to figure out what the thought process was with Pochettino and the staff and U.S. Soccer and that.
Yeah, I mean, Kyndra, I think we can speak frankly and say that it's not a good look for Pulisic that, I don't mind him and Landon Donovan going at it on social media or personally or like that to me is like shows some like fight back. I don't like when he has his dad do it and he likes
Yes.
a tweet and now his dad is going at Landon. That to me, he should go back and say, "Dad, stay out of this. This is my world." Now, where I'm concerned is we're talking about Pulisic. Like, I think he is one of the greatest players in the history we've produced for soccer, but he's still growing into what it is to be a leader. And again, I'm saying this nicely. He's not at the level of the top Portugal and Spain players who are the best teams in the world right now. And so to me, it doesn't affect it whether he played or not. Maybe we play a little bit better in one game here or there. I just want us to grow and get better to prepare for the World Cup. And what I'm concerned about for me is the narrative for me is more about where is the leadership going to come up from and how. And again, at the end of the day, in some ways, maybe this is good because maybe Pulisic isn't the leader that we want him to be. Maybe he's just a great superstar role player for the national team. And maybe this is going to help Pochettino realize that he's not our just pure number 10 that's going to take over the game like one of the top 5 players in the world at the end of the day, even though he's freaking amazing and fast and lightning quick and he plays with heart. He plays with his heart in his sleeve, but there's other leadership qualities there that I would say either you come for the month and you're in and around it even, and that's a leadership moment, or you say, I need to break, I need to be with my family, I've got, a girlfriend, I've got to get away to reboot. And again, modern soccer players might be different in the past. These old school guys are saying, no, this goes away quickly. Every month I can be with the national team, I'm doing it. I'm going to be there. And there's no right or wrong necessarily, but there is a little bit of like being bummed out because ultimately we don't maybe have a guys who right now feel like they are going to commit everything to being good in a year.
But also, right, he is no threat to not be on that roster and for the World Cup. Like, Landon was left off the World Cup roster by Klinsmann. There's other guys that, can talk about taking a sabbatical and like taking time off, and they're legitimately with someone else to take their spot. I mean, there's something to be said too, maybe about not feeling like pressure. We talk about competition all the time, right? At training every day at Minnesota United. What's the best thing you can do is have quality players to create competition at training every single day. So you never know. You're always fighting for your spot. Nobody's guaranteed. But Pulisic doesn't have that. Nobody's going to bump him out. He's going to be on that roster in 26, right?
Yeah, I would imagine he's going to be on. It's hard to say that he's not going to be on that, barring an injury. A lot of this conversation also has revolved around Mauricio Pochettino, the head coach of the U.S. men's national team, and what he's been able to do in his 10 games in charge since taking over last September. 5 wins, 5 losses, 0 draws, and that includes 4 straight losses now for the U.S., including a rough performance in the Nations League where they lost to Panama and lost to Canada earlier this year. Where do you guys stand on what you've seen from Pochettino after 10 games? I know it's only 10 games, so there's not a whole lot of sample size, but you don't get a whole lot of competitions as the men's or as a national team head coach, so you have to make these judgments based off of little sample size. Where do you guys stand on what you've seen from Pochettino, and what is your confidence level heading into the Gold Cup with him as the head coach, Manny?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I'll bring up my frustration. But again, I will change it very quickly to an opportunity for Pochettino to get paid to what he can do, which is coach and manage a national team and absorb the strengths and weaknesses and all of our warts and all of our positives to build something in 12 months from now. But what I would say is that it's kind of like we're now kind of honing on the channel of this current 2 games, which were to me a disaster. But I will start first before Pochettino, real quick, Jonathan, with the narrative of that Kyndra brought up about MLS versus Europe. That lineup was MLS Europe over the weekend. And a couple months ago, closer to our first team lineup lost in March. And a year ago, our first team lineup lost in the Gold Cup. Yeah. So I'm not buying the narrative of European versus domestic. I don't care. I just want us to win. I want us to always have guys in the field. And I want us to put a coach in the field that understands the player pool, understands the quality differences, and sets up a team to be competitive and not lose 4-0 at halftime against a very good team, by the way. They make runs in the World Cup all the time. That, to me, is where I'm going to say, Pochettino, fine. you're starting to learn the player pool, but that's unacceptable. It just is. Like at the end of the day, you've had a couple months now. You're looking at 30 to 50-ish players. You're gonna know that there's a difference in levels. So we had maybe a C/D team national team out there versus an A team Switzerland. You as a coach now, you understand from a quality standpoint, we are losing that game. What are you doing? I guarantee you, Diego Simone or Arteta is not setting up that team to not be defensively disciplined in the first 15, 20 minutes. He's just not. And so for me, I think we can now slowly shift to say, Pochettino, we expect you to now coach. We expect you to now to understand our player pool, understand the difference in qualities, but that doesn't mean that you can't still compete with those qualities. Like there's no doubt you could play a different way against Switzerland in that with the current roster of Gold Cup and have a competitive game. I mean, personally, I hated the roster lineup. Like I just didn't, like I could tell it was a bunch of guys that didn't play together. I didn't love the system with that lineup. I didn't love, frankly, some of the European guys who I don't think are top European players. So that they're even in a weird place where they might expect to be the ones that carry the team when maybe it should be the MLS guys. Like I said, I don't really care, but I do care about Pochettino understanding where we are, what our identity is, and making sure that we're competing. Because we've gotten to a point now we have good enough players to compete outside of that top 6 or 7 I mentioned. And Switzerland's outside of the top 6 or 7. So no, we should not be down 4-0, 37 minutes into a game at home against most competition.
Kyndra, your confidence level in this U.S. squad, and what are your expectations for the Gold Cup coming up this month?
Oh, that's a rough one. Confidence level is not great, but I'm not going to put it all on the players. I mean, they're selected on this roster to be put in this position. I understand they're the ones stepping on the field. There's no doubt in that. I mean, this is constant battle, right, between at any level of the players versus the coach. And Manny was just talking about the tactical nature of things. Pochettino putting them in a position where they can succeed, in a place where they can be effective, in a style that they can be, especially having played very little time together, heading into those 2 games. So I'm hoping that they come out with a sense of wanting to prove us all wrong in a certain degree, which goes back to the nature of just sort of this fighting and this, pridefulness and this wanting to battle. And kind of like, was that a couple summers ago where it was labeled like the B squad and they ended up winning the whole thing?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was all MLS players.
Yeah. And you know what I mean? And I think they had a chip on their shoulder. Like, screw you guys. You're going to doubt us because we don't have the top guys in. Watch us. And they crushed it. Right. And so I'm hoping they kind of come back with that. So I want to have confidence. I know these are quality.
No, Kyndra, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think the Gold Cup is a hugely less level than Switzerland. This Switzerland team, like one World Cup, I think they didn't lose a game, but they lost in penalty. Like they are so good defensively. Usually they're so solid. Like you're talking about a team that routinely gets to the final 16 of World Cups. Yep. We're going now against the Gold Cup now where I think are probably second best to Canada, which is really hard for me to say, but Canada is better than us right now. And I would even say that if our first team, they're probably just a little bit better unity and a better kind of identity of what their roles are in the field. But even with this Gold Cup roster, we're, I think, the second best team in this tournament. Mm-hmm. And so that turns to the players themselves and it turns to the coach. But it can't be just going around running on the field crazy. Like that working harder doesn't mean just like spazzing out and not being smart and being a group and a unit and being smart in terms of how you work, but it does mean you leave everything on the field. Like I do think there's that balance there. So sorry to interrupt, Kyndra, but I want to bring up like the quick shift is here. We're back to a favorite in almost every game we're going to play in this Gold Cup.
Yep. But quickly too, Jonathan, on that, like, and Manny, on your point about Canada just sort of looking a little bit more slow. I mean, look how quickly Jesse Marsch got them all understanding sort of their roles and their identity and a style. And how much time do you give Pochettino? Not time like firing him, but just you need to establish at some point what we're trying to do here stylistically or philosophy wise. And you can shift based on opponents. I mean, look at MLS. We've seen Eric Ramsey do it time and time again, right? Like based on the opponent. You have a general idea and philosophy, but knowing who you're playing against doesn't make a difference and what your roster looks like. But at the same time, like there's got to be some sort of clear-cut identity. I thought I saw Tony Meola say he doesn't understand why Pochettino doesn't have an American on this staff. Is that accurate? He doesn't have an American on his staff. Yeah. Like he was like, call Tab Ramos, like immediate, like just to maybe to your point, understanding the player pool or the dynamics, or I don't know. I didn't hear the whole thing. I just saw the quote, but I don't know if that.
No, it's fair. That's my point. Like there's a window here where I'm okay with Pochettino kind of like struggling and me looking at the game from a tactical standpoint and say, whoa, he got it all wrong, because he can have a built-in excuse, but he's still learning the player pool. But that's got to end pretty quickly. Like at some point, then you have to know the disparity. You have to like absorb it. You've got to be like this guy who's for 3 months obsessing about learning the player pool, traveling the game.
And that's on him then, not to bring somebody in that like knows the player pool already to help him. It's the same thing we always say, surround yourself with people that know more about different areas than you do. And it makes you look smarter in the end, So like, I agree at some point we got to flip the switch here, but it's on him a little bit to come into this country and not have someone on his staff that might have better intuition or insight into the existing player pool in this country.
Yeah, and I do think the bigger frustrating thing about, let's just give somebody like Berhalter, who's had an amazing, one of the best players. He's still growing. It was like his first national team game. Like you want to sprinkle him in with the first team guys to see if he pops the first team up, because that's an area of the field that needed just somebody like him. And now you're probably over assessing, well, he's just not good enough. Like, again, I will tell you, it feels bad because it is bad, but I look at all these situations like such an opportunity for Pochettino to then now to really build a team and a group that's better than individuals. And like I said, I cannot give Jesse enough compliments about how you look at his European guys coming back, and I don't think about where they're playing overseas. I look at a Canadian player playing Buchanan being this crazy wingback that's going to be aggressive and go forward and relentlessly go play on both sides of the ball. So I think Jesse's done a great job of making sure the European guys don't act like superstars. I love my big example of Valverde is so good for Real Madrid. When he plays for Uruguay, I forget he plays for Real Madrid. Because he's like, I'm going to bust my ass off for my country and play in a way that represents Uruguay. So again, no, like Europe versus MLS, they're all same. They're all U.S. national team players. And we have to have a coach that gets them aligned when they step on the field. That is what they are. And so I'm not going to buy him too much as a Pulisic, because he's just a cog in the wheel as well. And you know what? If he gets injured with the ACL, hope he doesn't, knock on wood, all that stuff. I don't care. I want a team next year that's ready to fight and battle on the field, because they're so hungry to show that they are this great cog in the wheel. They're not a superstar that's going to take us, to the finals of the World Cup.
I think it's a good spot to end the U.S. men's national team conversation.
Jonathan, I only have one other thing. We got to get better at goalkeeping. That was just horrible. And I mean, Matt's got to start playing games.
Yeah. I think that's the key for him, is getting to start games and play on a regular basis, where he hasn't. It's been stop-start for him for the past couple of years.
Yeah, but Kyndra just mentioned we had all these young guys 4 years ago that I still think can make a redemption and have an amazing World Cup. I really think all of them have a potential great role to play. I cannot believe, for the life of me, in decades of great goalies, top 5 goalies in the world, that we are now in this glut going into a World Cup without one of the most important positions in the field, a top-level world goalkeeper, class.
Well,
goalkeeper.
And then how about the couple guys get hurt? I mean, Stefan got hurt in camp. Who was the other guy? Is it Columbus Crew? I'm totally spacing. Got hurt before he went into camp. Like somebody.
But Kyndra, those are just. I say
they're
this
like fillers. I get it.
I cannot believe our country has not produced a world-class goalie since the era of the Tony Millas, Brad Friedels, Casey Kellers. Like, it blows my mind. Like that, we're at this point getting ready for a World Cup, and the one position we thought we'd be locked in with a superstar, we've got the most questions.
Yeah, it used to be the number 9 was the question. Now we're like, well, who's number 9? Oh, who's the center back? Oh, who's the goal? I'm like, oh my God. And then there were like some cringeworthy moments in that Switzerland game where you're like, is this for real? Is this real life? What I'm watching?
That goalkeeping position is really depressing. Because, I mean, like I said, you start to look at our starting lineup for the World Cup. And I mean, again, we're going to have the best outside back in the Premier League. Des can, on a given tournament, become one of the best right backs in the world. We've got McKennie can be, like we've got positions, and we even have depth at 9 in a weird way, where the game is going where there's only like a couple countries in the world that even have a true number 9 that's dominant. So I'm not even scared about the 9. Like, again, I think we can build up more depth than people realize. like I said, not to hit that top 5 in the world, top 6 in the world teams, the Portugals and Spain. Those are the world-class superstars. But outside of that, I still think we have a really quality 16 top level, except for goalkeeper. And that scares me big time because that is something where I don't know where it's going to come from. And it's a position that usually doesn't pop right before the World Cup where we find somebody that we haven't seen. We have a lot of good professional goalkeepers. We have 0 world-class goalkeepers in the pool, which is tough.
It's really weird to hear after feeling for decades like that's been the strongest position on this team. So
yes.
Let's move on to some more positive talk, more positive feelings. MLS in action over the weekend. Chicago 7, DC United 1. Manny, I don't think I saw Chicago putting up a touchdown on DC United this weekend.
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, I'll be curious to get Kendra's thought. If like her brain who's done so many games, like I don't know if I've seen a team score 7 goals away like that. Obviously, I've seen some goals 7 at home.
We've seen Nashville put up 7 on Chicago earlier this year, but Chicago doing it.
That was at home. Yeah, Chicago was on the road for that game. It was unbelievable. I actually ended up watching the game, and like from minute 1, something was going on where they just at will got in behind, and probably could have had a couple more even in the first half when they really kind of blew it open. So our eyes are on that game because we play them in the quarters on July 8th, I believe. Which is a huge game. So we're going to have a good opponent offensively, particularly because they look like they're kind of starting to fire on all cylinders. And Bombo is bombing up and down that line and creating all kinds of havoc. And
Zinkernagel. Like if people didn't know Zinkernagel before, they do now. I've done games this year, but I mean that guy is incredible, and he's got like a ridiculous engine. He just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, and they set up Barlow, who's not a great finisher, but on his given day, he works hard. He's like kind of your typical MLS forward that will go drought of a couple months of goals, and then because he works so hard, he'll be in the spots for the goal. So I'm curious, Kendra, what you think about DC United. We obviously don't follow the East that much. Is this in their DNA? Was this because of the international break and they're missing guys? I hadn't watched them that much, and they just looked really out of all over the place, essentially.
Yeah, I've done a couple DC games this year, and unfortunately, I'd like to say that this is probably in their DNA right now. Yes, they don't have Benteke, he's been injured for a bit, but even before that, DC was struggling. I don't think anybody expects anybody to put 7 goals up on them. I mean, it seemed like one of those where the wheels just fell off, and the goalkeeper Barraza has been incredible for them since coming over from New York. Like he's kept them in a number of games. Like I remember watching one game before the DC game that I did. I think I did DC against Nashville, and I rewatched their previous game. And actually it was against New York. So of course it was against his former club. I mean, if he hadn't stood on his head, it could have been 7, so unfortunately for Troy Lusain, like, I don't deep dive as much into the building of the roster and all the things, because this is only his second full season there. Who's at fault for what, or how the money gets spent. And, Gabby Pirani is just coming back and healthy. So I think he's a big piece for them, but there just seems something missing from that DC team. And I feel for Lusain because it just like, he kept talking to us about, that they've had like consistency, but not sustained consistency. They have these like blips and moments, but they haven't been able to sustain it. And everybody talks, I mean, who doesn't talk in this? I feel like consistency is like the word of the year. Every coach we talk to talks about consistency. But there's a difference between finding consistency and sustaining it for a lengthy period of time, whether that's in a game or in a run of games. And I don't know. I mean, I really like Chicago, to be honest. So I don't know if this was more a Chicago thing or more a DC thing. And I've really liked what Berhalter, like the message and the style they play and the way they play. I think they're going to be a team that's going to be up there in the East. That Bamba guy is incredible. Zinkernagel's been great. And then you've got the normal Kuipers, which Kuipers, I don't even think he played in this game. I think he's away. No. So I think that was a fun one to go watch the recap and see the goals. But it is one of those where you're kind of watching going, oh God, I feel bad. Oh, I feel terrible. It's like, I felt like I was watching a youth soccer game where I was feeling bad for the opponent in that moment,
Combined with it's a home game, which hits even harder.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. And DC struggled, right, with their fan base basically since they built that new stadium. I mean, they just can't, seem to find the right I don't even know. I don't know what it is, but they haven't been able, they don't really sell out there. It's a great location, maybe tough to get to, kind of like Soldier Field, right? Where it's like, oh, let's put it right in the middle of DC, but it's very tough to get to. So we'll see what happens, but that was a fun one. And good on Chicago for finding a moment like that.
Yeah, elsewhere in the Western Conference, some big results. 2-0 win for Austin over Colorado. But the big series of results came Sunday. Portland 2-1 over St. Louis, LAFC 3-1 over Kansas City, and the Vancouver just running roughshod over Seattle, who I know went down to 9 men in the second half after back-to-back red cards in short span. So it was a 3-0 win for Vancouver, but a Vancouver side that was missing pretty much everybody from their main roster, it felt like, when you look at the status report for that game. But that was a surprising result of the weekend with how many guys were missing for Vancouver, with who was playing for Seattle. I don't think anybody expected Vancouver 3, Seattle 0, Manny. And Vancouver just continues to put themselves, I think, head and shoulders above everybody else in the Western Conference at this point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets me excited from a great result we just had there.
Yeah.
And that 0-0 game obviously wasn't our prettiest game or really us trying to venture forward, but what a bounce back game. And I did watch it, and I will tell you that, like, the red cards were a result of their dominance. It wasn't like they got the red cards and they dominated. They were dominating the game, and both red cards were because they got in behind and were controlling. And Seattle really had no answers for 90 minutes. And then once it went down to 9 men, I think it was probably like the 58th minute-ish, it obviously was all over at that point where they could go. But that was coming. That was not going to be a Seattle kind of smash and grab. And you're right. I think Vancouver, I still think there's going to be a little bit of a post CONCACAF Champions League kind of spell here. But right now, given that they lost that game, they had missed guys, so they probably had guys who are hungry come back and play and get a result home like that. It's kind of like their year. They keep on proving people wrong with how they play.
What do you guys think? I wanted to ask real quick on that, on the other side of it with Seattle, having Minnesota, having just had played them and gotten their first victory on the road. And maybe you're going to hit this, or in Seattle, I should say. Maybe you're going to hit this.
We hit it last week, but we'll do it again.
I'm sorry. I'm so far behind.
We're very happy to bring up the first win in MLS, 0-10-0 to 1-10 1-10.
What do you guys make? So you already hit this. You don't have. We can talk about this offline. But I'm just curious your thoughts on this Seattle team. Like what, I mean, aside from getting the win, just in general, as we're talking about the result against Vancouver, or lack thereof for them. I never know what to make of Seattle for sure until like the last week of the season.
I'll let Jonathan go. Jonathan, what do you think?
I still think they're a very good team, and they should be a team that, if you're at the top of the Western Conference like Minnesota are at this point, that's a team that you still have to keep your eye on because of how well coached they are. Brian Schmetzer, one of the best coaches in this league. I think they've just been hit with injuries. And yeah, as Manny pointed out in that Vancouver game, Vancouver basically played the same play twice in a row, and they got red cards on both of those plays, just hit long balls over the top and try and get up and get behind that Seattle defense. And the Seattle defense was caught out a couple times in short span. And it's just a team that kind of is up and down because of their injuries. I feel like they haven't been able to build a consistency, as you mentioned, Kyndra. They haven't been able to build a consistency in that roster throughout the season. I think that's it for me on what Seattle is. I still think they're a very good team, and one to be that you can't take lightly going down the last half of the season, Manny.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the roster is too good to not understand that Brian Schmetzer is a great coach that tends to build a group that's super competitive by the end of the year. I think the adversity, if I'm being honest, is a little bit of their defensive injuries, which is a fair excuse. But I think that the elephant in the room is we talk about how hard it is to win and make sure everything's combined, whether it's the mental, the physical, the tactical, the technical. And then you throw in this Club World Cup and you throw in these guys that are really upset and the drama. I don't know if people know about the ownership and the payments for the Club World Cup and the preparation and like the protests and the owner going down in the field after our game. They're going through a lot. And so I would say that's probably affecting this as well for them.
Hey, so that means you guys already talked about the Cruz Azul game against Vancouver.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dang it.
We didn't talk about the news that came out from Jesse Marsh saying that the team was poisoned, but
but I mean, it also,
Strong word
we were
there.
like, just putting Vancouver on this pedestal. I forgot about that game, and I was like, oh shoot. But anyways, we don't have to talk about that. You guys already did that. That's like old news now.
That's all right. It was a tough loss for tough. I mean, yeah. I what I tell people is people don't
I didn't
realize.
see that coming.
Yeah, Mexico in altitude in the summer and the smog and getting down a couple goals early is not a recipe for a great day of soccer. And Vancouver's run ended like, obviously 15, 20 minutes into that game based on just all of those elements kind of coming together. And I will this time add that I think losing Berhalter, who's been their leader, was a huge loss and probably could have been responsible maybe for them to take a deep breath when it got 1-0 to make sure they didn't allow it to be, I think it was 3-0 at halftime.
Mm-hmm.
Do game day like a VIP with Minnesota United premium tickets. From suites to private boxes to the outdoor roof deck experience, Allianz Field offers a range of luxury seating options that'll make you feel like a pro. Learn more about our spaces at allianzfield.com. So when you look at the standings at the halfway point in the season, Vancouver sitting first place, 5 points above San Diego and Minnesota in second and third, but second through sixth are all separated by just 4 points, 30 points for San Diego and Minnesota, 26 for LAFC and Seattle down in fifth and sixth place. It feels like there's a bit of a gap forming in the Western Conference between the top 6 teams and everybody else in the Western Conference. There's that middle pack in the West of Austin, San Jose, Colorado, Houston, if you want to throw them in there as well. My question on that gap, though, Portland sits in there at fourth, though the news came out just yesterday that Jonathan Rodriguez is suffered a season-ending injury. He'll have surgery, so he's done for the season. How does that affect Portland and where they stand in the Western Conference? Fourth place right now, 29 points. They've stacked 8 wins in the first half of the season, but that is a tough pill to swallow for them. One of their best attackers, one of the most influential attackers, now done for the season, Manny. How do we expect that to Portland to respond and kind of deal with that?
Yeah, I'll just be honest. I think it helps them. Probably, I think there's a tension that was brewing about he really wasn't as effective and kind of built into a system of discipline. And I think when he plays, they tend to be kind of all over the place defensively. He obviously gives you that kind of vertical excitement going forward, but I could be completely wrong. My gut says that I think there's some sense of relief in Portland that they can now start to build an identity of kind of more of a balanced offense and defense to try to be a competitive team in the league. I think it's felt to me like he was playing less and less before this anyway. So yeah. I don't like anybody getting injured, but this might actually help them build into being a very competitive group, by the end of the year.
Kyndra, how do you see the Western Conference shaking out with where teams are at the halfway point of the season? Manny and I talked about where we feel the West is and where we feel Minnesota are in after the halfway point. What's your feelings on Minnesota in the Western Conference and I guess just the West in general at the halfway point in the season?
I think this proves to me once again that I never know exactly what I'm doing at the beginning of the year, and they make us do our picks. Because if you would have told me, and I'm just re-scrolling through the first half, the top half and this bottom half of the Western Conference, that was going to be your 10 through 15, and that's what it was going to look like. And LA Galaxy, we could talk forever about them having only 7 points, and that, San Jose, even with Bruce coming in, still, I'm shocked they're in 8th, just because it's tough to make a change from a culture that has suffered through so many coaching changes and so much uncertainty and roster turnover for so many years to get them in 8th position and essentially above or near the playoff line. So it just proves to me once again that I don't know what I'm doing, and I hate that they make us pick those picks at the beginning of the year, and then I just have people throwing it back in my face. Like Colin, texted me last year a screenshot of my pick of, I think I had Minnesota. I don't even want to bring up where I had Minnesota, but I think it was not where they ended. But honestly,
you didn't have it laminated like Austin had their preseason predictions laminated.
Yeah. I don't think anybody in that locker room or in that office cares as much about my pick as, people like on X or Twitter. I don't think my pick is going to be affecting people. But to this weekend's matchup, did you guys see San Diego at this point, the halfway point, an expansion team still being in this high up in the table? I don't know. Like I'm looking at the roster. I'm studying them really hard this week because I haven't had a San Diego game yet. But
why do we have Kyndra on the show, Jonathan? I wanted somebody who had a San Diego because we've never played this team. We've never seen them play.
But also at the
I
same
thought Kyndra would be our expert in talking about San Diego.
Also, at the same time, like, what rosters are we going to get? Who's going to give me the scoop on who's starting for Minnesota on Saturday? Who's starting for San Diego? Again, going back to this international break, this should be like a ridiculously sick 2 versus 3 matchup. And yet I'm like sitting here going, who's going to be available? You know, somebody tried to put Michael Boxall in a headlock yesterday.
Why are you on the show right
happen?
now, Kyndra? Like, what are you providing? We thought we were going to get the insight from San Diego from you.
Well, I mean, I have been studying, I've been watching their games over and over and over again, but
I think that's as good of a transition to the match or to the preview part of this conversation and podcast as we can ever get. Manny asking Kyndra why she's on the podcast. So as you guys mentioned, San Diego is second place in the Western Conference, 9 wins, 5 losses, three draws. Coming into the season, there was heavy predictions for them being at the bottom of the Western Conference or fighting maybe for one of those wild card spots in the playoffs, but they have just been impressive from the opening game of the season and continued rolling on. Manny, this has been a fun team to watch this season. They have been really impressive putting performances together, though, as we pointed out, they'll be missing some players due to injuries, due to international call-ups. Luca De La Torre's gone for U.S. men's national team. Chucky Lozanzo's gone for injury, I'd imagine. Anders Dreyer, who's been one of their best players this season, maybe he'll be back. We don't know. I mean, his international duty is done, so he could be available this weekend. We'll see how that plays out. But from just an outside perspective, what's been your takeaway from what you've seen from San Diego this season?
Yeah, I think Kyndra kind of asked the question about, like, did anybody see them being this good? And the answer is no, in terms of not just the standings. So I'm so excited for the game this week for like 1,000 reasons. One would be it's the first ever game for us against a club in MLS. I always get excited. Like, to Kendra's point, I don't know what's going to happen until I kind of see a team live and kind of get a vibe for how they are as a club. I don't think you get that until you see a live game. So I'm really excited about that. The fact that, you know, we're kind of both tied for second and they're in second place based on wins, total wins for the season. It's huge for us. I think if we want to be serious about being at the top of the West, these are the kind of games that we have to win at home. So it really is a big game. And then you mentioned now the specific matchups and things like that. I think the Dreyer kid's been unbelievable. And I think he will be available. He did play, I think, for Denmark in their 4-0 win on Tuesday. So I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be back. And kind of help him to lean that line. I think Chucky's been a great kind of signing, both from marketing, but when he got healthy, then they kind of started to dip, and then he came and kind of pushed them back up because they had a couple bad losses away. I think they've been locked out at home in terms of 6-1-3, but I think the biggest injury they have going into this one is Patty McNair. They have this Northern Ireland defender that I think has been outstanding. And that's a really big loss for them. I don't want anybody not to play. We always want to play against the best. But that's a really big loss. He's been one of the better defenders, I think, in the league this year. And they've had a great balance, offense and defense, and just a great explosion to MLS. I mean, the energy, particularly at home, that they have right now is outstanding. And they're doing it by that game against Austin last week. They really took it to them. I mean, there was no doubt they were going to win the game. It just was one of those games where, like, what's the scoreline going to be?
Well, and then they played Club America. Do you think there's a benefit there of playing? I mean, they played that friendly in the middle. Like, you know, that last weekend, I think they played Club America and won like 3-0. Like, and we talk about this long layoff. You know, there's a like age old, you know, debate about too much time off, not enough time, you know, getting guys rest, the guys that are here, should they get it? And maybe you guys, I don't know, Minnesota and I maybe have scheduled something that not obviously on that level, but some sort of competitive games or 11v11s within the club, just to make sure that guys you're not just training every day, because that gets a little, you know.
Yeah, we were a little bit, and we obviously the staff, not me, but the staff really works hard on that kind of micro macro management. it was different for us, Kyndra. We had 9 games in, what was it, Jonathan? 29 days?
Yeah,
Like,
9 games in 29 days.
yeah.
San
So
Diego had 7 in, I think,
we were
28.
cognizant to not have that type of build up.
That type of competition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the guys had 3 or 4 days off, and they had some 3 or 4 really hard kind of fitness sessions.
Mm.
You know, another day off, then a couple hard fitness session days, and day off yesterday because all the international guys are coming back.
Yep.
And then they'll flow into the weekend. So I think every club's different. I think our club's prepared well for it. It was probably I think this build up was more appropriate to give them more break. Now after this game, the guys get another break because we don't play for 10 days. That's the entire league is off for kind of the opening of the Gold Cup and maybe Club World Cup as well.
Mm-hmm.
And all teams won't start up again until the 25th of June. So it is a weird month where there's a lot of time off. And you're bringing up a good question. You know, my argument would be I'm guessing that game with Club America was not sporting directive. I'm guessing that game was more financially directed.
Yeah, for sure. Because obviously there's a lot of promotion around that one.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point though. I mean, then that we come off this May where everybody's like, holy crap, how many, you know, game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hit June and it's like, hey, you've got 2 blocks of 10, you know, and again, that's a whole nother conversation about the calendar and yada, 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 but you can only do with what you got, right? You got
and by the way, guys, it just really brings up how important this game is this weekend.
Yeah.
You know, when you're not playing a lot of games in a month and we finished that road trip off so well. Like it was, Kyndra, Jonathan and I talked about it. I don't think there's a team that had a tougher road trip and to get 4 points this year there. So I would say that's why this game Saturday is really important for us to get 3 points and to really feel like we're still building for the momentum of how we finished that long kind of 9-game stretch.
Mm-hmm.
And because there aren't a lot of games this month, and July will come fast and furious with different challenges with more games again. But can we kind of really prepare and build the group? And we are missing Tani and Dane, Joe and Harvey, but they're missing a lot of guys. So it's a really, when you don't have a lot of games, it's a really important one to get your 3 points at home.
I think you mentioned the guys that the Loons are missing. And I think that leads to the question of that Kyndra had earlier. What does this matchup look like for the Loons? Who do they line up and who do they play? I would imagine based off what we saw, Manny, and obviously don't give away too many details, but I would imagine just kind of piecing things together on what we've seen, especially in that Seattle game. Owen Jen lines up in the midfield alongside Will Trapp in place of Carlos Harvey. My question is, what do they do at that other 10 spot where we've seen it between Joaquin Perea and Robin Lode? Typically under Eric Ramsey over the past year and a half, Robin Lode hasn't started those games when he's returned from international duty. He's come off the bench. So if that's the case, who lines up as that other number 10? It'll be very interesting.
I mean, obviously, training today, they'll have a big kind of see who Robin is. By the way, 2-1 win against Poland. Robin Lode played 86 minutes. What a great result for their country. It keeps them in the World Cup qualifying picture in a group that has Poland and Netherlands. So what a great result for him to be part of that for his country and see where they go this fall with the next window. I'm going to flip it because I don't have an answer, so I'm going to cheat. To me, it's all about Kelvin Yeboah. We know he's going to get a chance. We know that there were some great moments he and Tani had. There was great moments he had last year. This will be his opportunity to kind of show his kind of just where he is in terms of his mental and physical state to help contribute a win. What a great opportunity for him with Tani away to kind of maybe reassert the kind of level he was at last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Jonathan, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
That's fine. I think that's the biggest kind of addition with Tani leaving is Kelvin probably goes back to the starting spot.
And also it kind of changes, you know, the question about the other number 10, because however Ramsey decides to line them up, you know, I mean, Robin, you know, can kind of be that secondary forward, or when he was playing a 2-forward system when Tani and Yeboah were up there. But if you know, then Robin, like, I don't know. I just kind of feel like, you know, with Yeboah starting up top, and if Robin doesn't go from the jump and he's available off the bench or whatever, I don't know. I just feel like it might depend a lot on how Ramsey decides to just line them up overall in general if Robin is out and Tani's clearly gone, you know.
Is this potentially
a revelation to me? Joaquin this year has been unbelievable. Like watching his defensive work rate, like I just want to put together a whole bunch of clips and show my daughter Like how hard he defends and wins the ball back. And watching that run, I was rewatching again the Minnesota Seattle game. That run down the sideline for that, was it the second or third goal? I don't remember.
Second, I
Where he's
believe.
just battling like the whole time, never goes down. I mean, that is not like this skinny number 10 that is just unbelievable. I think he's been a revelation, or maybe what they expected him to be. It's been fun to see.
No, he's been a revelation for sure. No, the expectation was there too, Kyndra, but he's been great. You're right. I do think it is because of his work on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
I think it's to your point. It's important that certain players have to contribute on both sides of the ball to be on the field nowadays in modern soccer, and he's certainly embracing that kind of mentality.
It's going to put it out there, Manny. You questioned whether we want to see last week when you and I were talking about the depth of this squad. And I mentioned Julian Gressel and Banghuke Longwane being on the same field at the same time. And you asked me, do you want to see that? Maybe we see that this weekend. Maybe he's the other number 10.
I mean, Kyndra just mentioned that there is options there, or you go with two up top, and it's could be Bongi and Yeboah. There's some options. Like I said, I think there's some good kind of options and opportunities for guys who hadn't been maybe getting that playing time. Now that we've got 4 guys gone, it certainly puts some challenges in Eric, but also creates opportunities. And that's why I brought up Yeboah, because I think it's a big couple of weeks for him to just get back to where he is, because he's got that confidence, he's got that belief. And I think, I don't want to say completely dipped, but I think the injury he had and then now getting back to that form, this is a great opportunity where we just need him to be firing in all cylinders. And I think we'll have a good run here for the next couple of weeks.
It's a big couple.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the Gressel Bongi, are you talking about Gressel playing the other number 10?
No, I'm talking about Gressel playing right wing back and Bongi playing.
He played quite a bit under Tata.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's capable of that as well. So that's
that's where he played at Providence. Yeah, that's a great point, Kyndra. I don't know if Eric's going to do that right now, because I think he just looking at Owen and Trapp and where we are. But you're right. Gressel's versatility is a value to how do we solve, when our roster is kind of a little bit depleted. And I think it's more about we've got 2 wingbacks now that, in their own way have been solid and sharp. And Bongi was great off the bench last game. So there's some plans there. Or do you start him from the get-go? So it'll be an interesting lineup this weekend. Like I said, I think
the other big question.
Eric has some good options.
The other big question about this lineup is who's in goal for the Loons. Dane St. Clair obviously gone away for Canadian national team duty. Alex Smir on the roster. We've seen him, I think, just once this season, but the guy who's been getting a lot of those minutes, especially in the US Open Cup, has been Wessel Spiel. He's the MNUFC 2 keeper. What do we see happening in goal for the Loons this weekend, Manny?
Well, aren't you the goalie expert?
Me? Why would I be the goalie expert?
Yeah, let's have you be the goalie expert. You start now, then I'll give you if I think you're right or wrong.
Oh man,
Kyndra too. Kyndra can say it.
I'm just the host of the show. I'm not supposed to provide the takes, but I'll do it. I would like to see Spiel get some minutes in MLS play. I think it would be interesting to see what he can do there. We've seen Smir. We saw him last year. He's kind of your number 2 keeper right now. But if Spiel's going to be this guy that the club is looking for towards the future, get him some minutes here in a big match. It's a big test for him for sure against a San Diego side that loves to have possession, will pepper him with shots, but I think no better chance to get his feet wet than in a big Western Conference clash, Kyndra.
I go with Smir in this one, just because it's a big Western Conference clash, and I like Spiel. I mean, I think I went to the U.S. Open Cup game. I thought he did really well. I think he's been good for the 2s. But I think in this moment, for some reason, my gut is just telling me I'm not I'm not at training. Clearly, I don't know what everybody's been looking like, but I think I would stick with Smir just from his experience and leadership. But I agree with what Jonathan said in the sense that if he's your guy of the future, as far as a backup to Dane or your number 2, that's a different story. So it's kind of are you looking for right now as in Saturday? Or are you looking for more towards the future and giving this kid confidence? And, Manny, you're the boots on the ground, so you're supposed to answer this first.
Well,
I also just like the idea of putting a guy who's 6'8" on the field and saying,
I like Wessel Spiel. It just sounds like a Disney movie. I like that.
I can tell you both are amazing, attributes, and they both have qualities that probably can help us in the game in different ways. So I think it's a tough decision for Eric. You guys kind of lined it up well. I mean, it was telling probably from a long-term perspective that Spiel got the start in that big Open Cup game. The question is, to your point, Kyndra, now, where do you want the experience versus like the youthful opportunity here? And so we'll see. I mean, that is a big. We are talking about replacing one of the hottest goalies in the league, and who do you do it with and how is really kind of be one of our big question marks for the weekend, because ultimately we know that's a position that we need to be solid tomorrow to walk off 3 points.
Kate, is nobody going to talk about? Is nobody going to talk about the Ukrainian player that tried to put Michael Boxall in a headlock yesterday? Did nobody see that? Oh my God. I was like, I'm watching it happen. I'm like, dude, let go of his neck. Like, you're going to get hurt. Let go of his neck. I'm like, wow, that guy, I almost wanted to like message Libby Boxall and be like, what is that guy think? Like, you know, it was one of those trying to break everyone apart. And he like had Boxall by the neck. And I'm like, that's a poor choice. Back away, back away.
That's hilarious. Yeah, you don't usually, you'll regret that usually if
yes.
Boxall's not one of those guys when you step on the soccer field, you look at it, you're like, I want to mess with that guy. Yes. I generally try and stay away from him.
Yeah, far away. There's certain people bearing down on you, and that's not one that you want.
I definitely have to look that up, Kyndra. That sounds like some nice drama for Michael. He had a great assist, by the way. Great assist.
Yes.
That pieces.
And this is like a rare occasion where he didn't have to go that far. Travel that far for international team. Normally it's halfway around the world, you know?
No, short flight back from Toronto.
Tactically, how do we see this one playing out? I know we've talked about the rotation of the players and how they'll deal with that, but tactically, how do we see this one playing out? This is once again, it feels like for Minnesota United, a battle of very different styles on the field, Kyndra. You look at San Diego, you look at possession numbers. They're second in the league behind Columbus, 59.5% possession. We've talked plenty about, and I know everybody across league circles has talked about Minnesota's willingness to let the other team have the ball. This feels like, once again, just like when we were talking about Seattle and Vancouver, these two teams playing into what the other team wants to do. Seattle playing into letting the Loons playing into the Loons wanting to hit on the counter attack. Minnesota playing into Seattle San Diego wanting to have the ball. How do we see this one tactically playing out on the field?
And it's been interesting talking to opposing coaches before they face Minnesota, because some are like that, where they're like, oh, we're going to force them to have the ball. We are going to make Minnesota figure out how to play with the ball, which I believe, I'm trying to remember which game it was earlier this season. Maybe it was at Austin. One of the games where after that game, Eric was like, we need to get better at playing with the ball. We are still going to do what we want to do, but we are going to have to find ways to beat teams if they are going to want us to have the ball, which sounds so backwards trying to say that. But I think this is going to be a game where Mikey Veras, the head coach for San Diego, is going to play exactly how he wants to play. And he's going to be okay with trying to beat Minnesota, letting Minnesota do what they're best at. Like, he's not going to change his style. San Diego's going to keep possession. They're one of the best teams at it in the league. They're good at finding ways. They can still play direct. We saw it against in that last game against Austin. They still found a way to go long on a few occasions, trying to find a run in behind. But for the most part, they want to possess, almost in a scary sense, trying to, play square balls across their own six, but they've found a way out. So I think they're going to possess. And I think Minnesota is going to do what they're great at. And that's exactly that, playing on the counter, but being smart, trying to find, regardless of who Eric puts in there, in the different positions or what formation he goes with. They're just too good and too organized to not play to their strengths, in my opinion, Minnesota United. And same with San Diego. They have capitalized on these moments. They're sitting at 2 and 3 in the table in the West because of capitalizing on what they're best at and knowing what their identity is. That both these teams are not going to change the way they play. So I don't know, it could be like some weird shootout of, who wins that battle. Is it the counterattacking, get on the wrong side of a San Diego team that likes to possess, or is it the possession and kind of like lull you to sleep almost a little bit Columbus Crew-ish, where you have to be on your game and make sure that you're not missing the moments to, track some of the runners. So I think both these coaches are going to be like, I'm going to beat you at my game and I'm not changing the way I play.
Manny?
I really like the way Kyndra put that in terms of these are two different identities and different value systems that I don't think the coaches will necessarily worry about too much what the other team does. Where I think the three keys are is a lot of teams have said that about what they're going to do against us. And I think it's shock and awe. I mean, again, the way this team, there's not a lot of teams in the history of MLS that played as well the way we have in this system and what we're doing. And teams, I think, prepare, but they're not prepared. So for me, that I've got three keys. I think the key number one for me would be the shock and awe of essentially making sure that they don't score first. Because most teams who go up against us, if they get that goal, they can get some confidence, oh, we can break them down. But if they don't, they tend to now lose their shape, lose their identity of what they want to do, just based on like how hard and frustrating it is to feel like you have time and space when you really don't. And then they get caught. My key number two is Kelvin Yeboah. It's really kind of elevating a position by losing a really informed striker in Tani, where we don't lose anything because we've got the depth in the bench right now. We've got two great forwards that are both hungry to play. And then my key number three is really a little bit of what Kyndra alluded to at the end there, which is winning the midfield battle. Mm-hmm. And for me, the winning the midfield battle is really like the evolution from the Vancouver game to Seattle, where we win the battle defensively because that's who we are, identity. But then we win the battle that we are professional soccer players. We're clever. We're going to keep it. We're going to decide when we want to go forward and have a counter ruthlessness, or when our midfielders are going to say, we're going to keep the ball a bit because we've got some tempo to us. That doesn't mean we're going to win the possession battle, but it just means that we're going to flip it a little bit and evolve to how Kyndra alluded to it, where we're going to use our possession in times to really hurt the other team, even if it's not a lot of times, versus just giving the ball away cheaply. So I'm excited for those three keys to happen and get the walk off the field with 3 points.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. This one is set up to be a fun one. 2 versus 3 in the Western Conference, Saturday night at Allianz Field, 7:30 p.m. kickoff. You can catch that on Apple TV with Kyndra de St on the call for that one. 7 p.m. pre-match show with Dan Terrar and myself on 1500 ESPN and the Score North mobile app for that one as well. And Manny, before we head off and close out the show, we got what we wanted. We finally have some Thursday and Friday night soccer in MLS.
Oh, yeah.
It's finally happening.
No. Thursday, Friday,
get more
Saturday,
of this.
Sunday, right? 4 nights.
Let's get more of this.
Hey, by the way, on that note, I mean, I have you guys had, what's your feeling? Is that the feedback been good, even the Wednesdays? I mean, let's go back to Wednesdays with May being ridiculous. Like, has people enjoyed, is that the feedback you guys have been having with some other options besides just Saturdays?
Well, I would say the Wednesdays our midweek games are fine. I think that's always going to be a tough one to like really get going, but I'm a big fan of taking over the weekend. So I think there should be Friday night soccer, Saturday night soccer, Sunday night soccer. Yeah. Like just like they're promoting a Sunday night game, I think they should have a Friday night game. And just again, we're a league of 30 teams, and again, we're talking, we're one of the smaller markets, but there are enough marquee leagues now where you could have a Friday, Saturday, Sunday kind of night games. I feel like so.
I like spreading it out a little bit so you can catch more of the action, see more of the teams. As Manny said, there's 30 teams. There's no reason why we need to stack everybody up on Saturday night in a 4-hour block. I think we have the space to spread everybody out. And I love Friday night soccer. It's a great way to kick off the weekend. Yes. And those games always tend to be hectic and really fun. And no better way to kick off Friday night soccer than with Portland and San Jose, which is sure to be just absolutely wild. I'm looking forward to that one.
And also Saturday nights, or Saturdays, I should say, just spreading it out a little bit. I was this weekend schedule because we have some friends, their soccer team, their son's team is in St. Louis. I was like, oh, maybe they can go to a game, and they play at 3:30, I believe, on Saturday. So just having like it, the game spread out on Saturday. I love sitting in my hotel room when I'm traveling and having all the games on, not just EPL, because once summer hits and everything, just all the games, on a Saturday leading into it. And by the way, guys, happy Father's Day weekend.
Oh, thank you.
Just going to kick it off now in case I don't remember to say it in the booth when I see you on Saturday. So happy Father's Day weekend to both of you. Hope you enjoy a good, solid weekend.
Well, it'll be a good weekend. United's back playing Allianz Field. It feels like forever since we played there, so it'll be a fun. Like you kind of said it best though. Like it is so cool to be playing an expansion team for the first time, a kind of new club, new roster, and then now at this point in this season where it really is about our own personal kind of growth to say, are we serious about trying to get to the top of the West? This is a game we have to have. This is a game that we have to show the country, the MLS, that we're serious about. Like Vancouver, won last week in Seattle, that we're serious about being right up there with Vancouver.
I'm looking forward to it. Should be really fun. Kyndra, appreciate you stopping by and popping on the podcast, despite Manny asking why you're on the show today. Looking forward to hearing you on the call.
By the way, she had a lot about San Diego. She said, I don't know anything about San Diego. And then she pontificated all about San Diego. So I'm not sure what that comment was, but.
Well, thanks guys. I appreciate you having me and I look forward to seeing you on the weekend. Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Loons fans, appreciate you tuning in. Tune back in right back to this podcast channel, podcast feed once again next week when we break down this match and preview that Houston game coming up in a little bit of time. I mean, there's a couple weeks off or another week off before that, but looking forward to that. Thanks again to the production staff, Grace Dearson, Kyle Hayward, and Evan Entler for putting this on every week, and we'll talk to you next week.